mainstream media has long been criticized for its portrayal of Jesus Christ, with many accusing it of spreading falsehoods and misinformation about the life and teachings of the central figure of Christianity. While it may seem counterintuitive to suggest that the media would intentionally fabricate stories about Jesus, a closer examination of the motivations and biases at play reveals a more complex and nuanced reality. One reason the mainstream media may be inclined to distort or invent stories about Jesus is to attract attention and boost ratings. In an increasingly competitive and sensationalized media landscape, outlets are under pressure to produce content that is provocative, controversial, and attention-grabbing. By twisting or exaggerating aspects of Jesus' life and teachings, the media can create a narrative that is more compelling and marketable to a wider audience. For example, a story about Jesus being married or having children may generate more interest and publicity than a straightforward account of his teachings on compassion and forgiveness. Another factor contributing to the media's propensity for fabricating stories about Jesus is the influence of secular and anti-Christian biases. Many media outlets and journalists are rooted in a secular worldview that is skeptical or even hostile to Christianity. As a result, they may be more likely to promote stories that undermine or challenge the traditional understanding of Jesus and his teachings. This can take the form of exaggerated or fabricated accounts of Jesus' supposed contradictions or flaws, or the promotion of alternative theories about his life and identity that are not supported by historical evidence. The media's tendency to fabricate stories about Jesus is also driven by a desire to create a narrative that is more palatable to modern sensibilities. In an era where traditional values and institutions are increasingly being called into question, the media may seek to create a version of Jesus that is more compatible with contemporary progressive values. For example, a story about Jesus being a feminist or a social justice warrior may be more appealing to a modern audience than a traditional account of his teachings on humility, sacrifice, and obedience to God. Furthermore, the media's fabrications about Jesus often reflect a deeper ignorance or misunderstanding of Christianity and its teachings. Many journalists and media outlets lack a nuanced understanding of the complexities and nuances of Christian theology, leading them to rely on simplistic or misleading tropes and stereotypes. This can result in stories that are not only inaccurate, but also disrespectful and disparaging to the millions of Christians who hold Jesus in the highest esteem. In addition, the rise of social media has created a culture of instant gratification and fleeting attention spans, where stories about Jesus can be quickly sensationalized and disseminated without being subject to rigorous fact-checking or critical scrutiny. This has created an environment in which falsehoods and misconceptions about Jesus can spread rapidly and take on a life of their own, often with little regard for the truth or the potential consequences. Finally, it is worth noting that the media's fabrications about Jesus are not only a disservice to Christians but also to the broader public. By promoting false or misleading stories about Jesus, the media can create confusion, mistrust, and division, rather than fostering greater understanding and respect for the world's largest religion. In an era where interfaith dialogue and cooperation are more crucial than ever, the media's penchant for fabricating stories about Jesus can have serious and far-reaching consequences. In conclusion, the mainstream media's propensity for fabricating stories about Jesus reflects a complex interplay of factors, including the desire for attention and ratings, secular and anti-Christian biases, a desire to create a narrative that is more palatable to modern sensibilities, and a deeper ignorance or misunderstanding of Christianity. By recognizing and challenging these factors, we can work towards creating a more accurate and respectful portrayal of Jesus and his teachings, one that reflects the depth, richness, and complexity of the Christian faith.